Support for the show comes from Carolina Forward, a nonpartisan organization dedicated to building a more equitable, democratic, and prosperous North Carolina.
You can learn more about their vision and values at carolinaforward.org.
North Carolina State Highway Patrol.
What cigarette do you smoke, Doctor?
A contributing factor to our juvenile delinquency of today.
Rock and roll has got to go.
And welcome back to the Hometown Holler. I'm Daniel Ayers.
And I'm Quinn Ray.
Well, hey, man.
All right, listen carefully. That is the sound of me becoming Quinn Ray. I normally drink seltzer or tea or water or coffee, but today I am cracking an ice cold Diet Mountain Dew. Are you proud of me, Quinn?
I am. I mean,
did our friendship just go to another level?
It did. We can cheers now to Diet Mountain Dew.
That's amazing.
It is. I told you it would
That's
be.
really good. Wow.
So I'm really excited. We got another special guest here at the Holler.
Let's do it. Sorry.
Man,
okay,
puns.
I'm done. I'm over the Mountain Dew.
I honestly think this is our first North Carolina House representative on our show.
Yes, we had former,
We've had former.
but now we have a current actual like goes to the House, has an office there, does cool work on the daily
Man, another first for the Holler.
every day.
We just keep going. So today's guest is a mother of three with deep roots in public education. Before stepping into the political arena, Julie von Haefen.
Haefen. It's like you have a friend named Finn, and you're seeing them like for the first time.
Haefen.
Hey, Finn. Haefen.
Perfect. Was a powerhouse within the Parent Teacher Association, or the PTA, serving at the local, county, and even state levels. From leading the Wake County PTA Council to serving on the North Carolina PTA Board of Directors, she has earned a reputation as a committed advocate for public education. In 2019, Julie became a representative, taking her passion for service to North Carolina House of Reps, where she currently represents the 36th district. Her work in Raleigh includes service on numerous committees, including appropriations, the Military Veterans Affairs, and most relevant for today's conversation, education. She has an extensive legal experience from practicing criminal law to education law, and if that's not enough, she also is a substitute teacher in Wake County Public Schools.
Wow.
Yeah, if that doesn't show you that Julie's dedication to education doesn't stop at policymaking, she's a hands-on in the classrooms, making a difference every day. Welcome to the Holler.
Thank you.
Also,
Yeah.
before we get much further, we can cool to just plow into it. Do you want to recut any of that, or we just want to give it to them straight up? This is 100% organic Holler material.
Oh, we're gonna do it.
Okay. This is happening. That's great. I'm all about it. Representative von Haefen, thank you so much for joining us. We have a lot to talk about. Quinn, do you want to kick us off?
Yeah, so I guess we'll just start out with the I got to do something. So can you just talk a little bit or tell us some stories that before you were a representative working in and around the public school stuff, what changed your life and you're like, you know what, I've got to step up, I've got to run for office, I got to represent the people?
Yeah, well, I have three kids of my own. When they were younger, I know we were talking before we went on about childcare. So I made the decision as a mom to step back from my legal career when I had my three kids because of childcare issues. And so when I was staying home with them when they were younger, you know, I've always been the type of person that's been really involved in whatever I do. And so I, started like working in the media center, shelving books just to like be in the school with my kids. And, I always say that's the first foray into eventually becoming PTA president because they you're there all the time and you get to know the teachers and the administrators. And basically that's what happened with me. I became really interested in getting more involved in the school, became the PTA president at my kids' school, and then took that leadership to the next level by being the Wake County PTA president, which at the time we had 182 schools. Wow. And so I was the president over all of those PTA units. It was a huge job. And then, went up to the state board for North Carolina PTA, where I directed our advocacy work. So I really come from organizing background.
Yeah.
And before I was in the legislature, I think what really got me interested maybe in running for office someday was that I was going to the General Assembly. I was meeting with legislators, my own legislators and others. And in 2017, there was a really controversial bill that was being passed in the General Assembly to limit class sizes in K-3. And parents were really upset because in order to lower class sizes, which we all, think is a good idea, they weren't giving any money to do that. And so school districts were having to shift their allotments for different teacher positions. And they were going to have to eliminate art, PE, music classes to basically open more classrooms for these, other grades. And so parents were really upset. And we really mobilized parents across the state around this issue. We had rallies and all kinds of different things at the time. And that was right before 2018, and when Governor Cooper and the caucuses were recruiting for candidates. And I guess my name was just out there as somebody that, was really involved. I was going to school board meetings, going to county commissioner meetings, talking about the budgets, and was approached in February of 2018 by our House caucus to run for this district. It was a very last minute thing because of redistricting, because of all the legal battles that have been going on. The General Assembly had just redrawn again the districts, and the two candidates that were actually planning on running for my district were gerrymandered out of the district.
Imagine that.
By literally the candidate they were going to be running against, who was, in the legislature at the time. And so they were very kind of scrambling at the last minute. So it wasn't really something I'd planned to do. I was, at the time, was still the Wake County PTA president, was very busy, and I was like, no, not interested.
Yeah.
And, just talking to them more, they were, very supportive about me running and thought I would be a great candidate. And I flipped my seat from red to blue and beat
that's awesome.
7-term incumbent.
Wow.
So it was really a great victory.
Oh,
so.
Cheers for that. That's really cool.
What was it like to get to Raleigh and already have kind of, I guess, some relationships, from your advocacy? I mean, I'm sure that made it maybe a little bit less daunting to know that you had some friends there waiting for you.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I had worked actually pretty closely with Senator Jay Chaudhry, who's the House or the Senate Democratic whip. He was a senator. He is a senator in Wake County that's very active with public education. I remember going to his office, talking to him, and then, it was kind of surreal to be sworn in, just a year later to the General Assembly and, have those friends there. It did help with the transition for sure.
Cool. That's such an awesome journey from just activism and not necessarily even political activism, but just getting involved at school. Like you said, working in the media center, right? Just getting involved. And from there, rising all the way to being in the room at the table where those decisions are made that impact the people in the media center. Mm-hmm. And as Quinn mentioned in the intro, you're still in the classroom.
I am, yeah.
Could you tell us a little bit about that? As a substitute teacher, is that right?
Yeah.
Oh.
I mean, so I still have 2 kids in high school in Wake County in public school. So, I'm still PTA member of all the schools that they go to. My one oldest son has graduated, but I think it was during COVID really that, they were just desperate for subs. I mean, at that time. And I just started thinking like, what better way to really know what's going on in the classroom? I mean, obviously, I had been in the classroom as a parent volunteer for many, many years. I mean, I've been in many, many schools all across Wake County and even in the state when I was on the state board. But there's a difference between being a volunteer as a parent for maybe an hour and being in charge of that classroom as a substitute. It's a completely different level. Sure. And I just thought, what better way to really understand what teachers are dealing with, what's going on in the school than to actually be there. And I always kind of compare it to that show Undercover Boss, because I go in and I don't say, hi, I'm Representative Von Haefen. Right. I do not tell anybody that I'm a state representative because I don't want that to taint
you don't want
like the administration treatment of me or anybody. So I just go in as Julie and like I'm here to sub. Now I will say some teachers do know who I am, or like they see me and they're like,
sure,
oh, they kind of have that shock look when they see me in the cafeteria or whatever, but I usually don't really tell anybody. So it really it has greatly informed my policy work, and also just how I can speak very authentically about what's really happening in our schools.
I think we're definitely fans of our representatives not only talking the talk, but like you're walking it, you're doing it, you're giving support where it's needed, most desperately needed.
Yeah, I mean, I want to get to the Leandro case and talk about that, but while we're talking about this, does it ever perplex you or frustrate you to talk with so many people, whether they're colleagues or voters who are on the side of defunding public schools, not supporting public education, criticizing public education, and it's like, you haven't stepped inside a public classroom in God knows how long, right? I mean, that as somebody who is in public classrooms and really has their finger on the pulse, do you find that frustrating?
100%.
Is that okay? Or I should, maybe a better question, is that something you experience that, with just a lot of the people on the other side of these issues don't have the frame of reference that you have?
Absolutely.
God, that would drive me crazy.
Yeah, absolutely. There's many, many people at the General Assembly who either, one, don't have kids, or they're older and haven't been in a classroom in many, many years. I mean, honestly, just kind of look at who's in charge of our K-12 committees in the House, and that will tell you a lot. I mean,
you can find that if you go to the hometownholler.com.
There's the plug. We have a button on our website where you can find your representative, find out what committees they are on, get all the deets, and even better, you can find out how to contact them.
That's right.
I called Senator Amy Galey's office this past week and spoke to her staff.
Good for you.
Yeah, thank you. Good for me. Well, let's go ahead and talk about one of the most significant terms in North Carolina politics, which is the Leandro case. That's something that I think has incredible significance for every person in our state, but it's also not something that's widely well known or understood.
I think it's the understood because people that are in the realm of advocacy and want to help public education, they have heard the Leandro
I feel like it's
case.
kind of like, if you know, you know.
Yeah.
Right. But
yeah.
if I went up to down here in Burlington, if I just walked up to somebody and said, Leandro case, what do you think? They'd be like, is that the new true crime podcast? I mean, they wouldn't.
So what is the Leandro case?
Okay. Well,
Here we go.
Yeah. Well,
Buckle up.
The Leandro case is a almost now 30-year-old court case that's been going on, since the mid-'90s about 5 counties, I believe, in rural North Carolina, poorer counties, sued the state and basically said that the state is not providing our constitutional guarantee. And we are one of the only states that actually, in our state constitution, says that the state will provide a public education for every child. And so they sued the state saying, you are not providing that. You are not living up to your constitutional obligation. And so the original court case, the original court basically agreed with them and said, you're right. Our state has the ability or has the responsibility to provide what you might hear a lot called a sound basic education to every child in our state, and the state legislature is not doing that because we're not giving the funding, the resources, whatever it is to that. So the case has gone back and forth many, many times. There's been multiple appeals, multiple hearings of this case over the years. But several years ago, the Supreme Court basically ordered an outside group called the West Ed Group unfortunately from California, because now we hear, it was a liberal think tank or something, which is not true.
California.
So the West Ed Group created what you may have heard called the Leandro Comprehensive Plan. And so this plan is basically saying, this is what we have to do over the next 10 years to fulfill our obligation to provide every child in the state with a sound basic education. And the comprehensive plan has multiple parts to it. And I brought some notes just so I don't leave anything out. It includes, go ahead.
The original court case then didn't indicate that they needed to give X amount of dollars. So what was the winning?
It was basically just saying that the legislature was in violation of our Constitution, and you need to figure out how to remedy that.
Okay.
And so
this is the what, you need to figure out the how.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And that's why they referred it out to an outside party, because they knew if they said to the legislature, you figure it out, the legislature is a party to the case, so you have to have a third party kind of analyze that.
And listeners who, if you've heard, listeners, our episode, The 7 Mountains of Indoctrination, which is one of my favorite episodes we've done, we actually talk about the Leandro plan, and we direct you guys to carolinaforward.org. They have an interactive map of the counties of North Carolina and how your county will benefit, all the public schools will benefit from the new funding that is outlined in this plan. So go check that out. It's a cool interactive map.
It's this comprehensive plan, correct, that says X amount of dollars.
Yes.
Okay.
So, I mean, the comprehensive plan has anything from, how to get a more high quality and diverse set of teachers and administrators to how to fund schools equitably and adequately. It covers early education. It covers testing. It covers even workforce development, even after K-12 education. Wow. It covers, like I said, early education. I mean, it covers the gamut.
So when they say comprehensive, they mean comprehensive.
Exactly.
Well, I mean, I'm learning something because I fully thought just the Leandro case was, all right, you're not providing this education, money is going to solve it.
Pay X amount of dollars.
Right, but obviously it's more than that.
It had policy changes. It had, it had everything from funding to how do we change things to make it better policy wise. And so, we hear a lot like, you can't just force us to pay money. Like that's what the legislature's argument has been, like this whole separation of powers. They say the court can't force us to spend money. That's the legislature's job to decide how to spend money. But it's not just about spending money. There's many, many policy changes that we need to make in order to improve education in this state.
Have we implemented any policy changes for this?
So there's been analysis over the years, after the comprehensive plan came out, like our legislative staff will go through. So I just wanted to say every year since the comprehensive plan came out and that I've been in the legislature, I filed a very comprehensive bill. Like I brought one. This is the first bill. This is how long it is.
And if y'all can't see that,
we're on a podcast.
It's a big one. Yeah. We should read this live on the air.
We'd be here for a few hours.
What's the bill number?
So this is the one I filed last year, 885, but House Bill 885. But I filed another one this year. I think it's 960. So they're always called Sound Basic Education for Every Child. So if you go on the legislative website, you can look up the bills. But I filed, I think this year is the fourth one that I filed, that it's this big.
So like same bill, different number kind of thing?
Yeah. So basically what these bills do is implement the comprehensive plan.
Okay.
So my goal is to say, if they say, well, we can't do that, we don't have legislation. Well, now they do. Like all you have to do is pass this bill and it would fund and change every policy that we need to do in order to comply with Leandro. And so I forget what your question was.
Yeah, well,
well, first of all, so now there's no excuse. Is essentially what you're saying,
that was
right?
My
like,
whole
oh darn,
goal.
Okay. And is this what did we have a friend of the pod, friend of the Holler, Ricky Hurtado?
Yes.
I think he might have co-sponsored.
He did.
Okay.
When he was in the legislature, so every bill in the legislature, you can have four primary sponsors on. And when Ricky was there, I had him on all the bills that I filed because he's such a big proponent of public education. And I have different ones since, unfortunately, he's not there anymore.
So when you said this is the fourth time you filed this, does the other party, they're like, oh shit, here comes Julie again with this. I mean,
like clockwork.
Right. And do they just, how is it received?
That's a great question. Yeah. Do they immediately, I mean, do they accept it? How do I say this? Do you feel as if you are both parties, not political parties necessarily, but you and the other folks with whom you are interacting in this process, is everybody engaging in good faith?
No.
Okay. Okay. Very good. Okay. Excellent. That was the okay.
So when you file a bill like this, and most of my bills, because I'm a very outspoken member of the General Assembly, and
thank you.
That comes with consequences.
Sure.
And when you're an outspoken member of this assembly, they don't like your bills because they know that you're going to use them as a messaging tool, which is what I do, because most of my bills, when I file them, what happens is you file the bill and then the speaker and the rules chair decide where that bill is going to be referred to, which committee. And if your bill gets referred to the Rules Committee, the House Rules Committee, that is the committee where bills go to die and never hear from again.
How often do they meet?
get referred to the
That
Rules
committee.
Committee. The Rules Committee meets quite often
Okay.
because it's also the last committee where bills go before they go to the floor.
Gotcha.
So every bill has to go to Rules.
But they might not
not
talk
every
about
bill
it.
has to be heard in Rules.
Okay.
So if you go on the legislative website and you say you look at my bill, like this year, House Bill 960 to fund Leandro, you'll see it was read in, because every bill has to be read 3 times before it passes. You read it in, and then it's referred to a committee. So if you see that the bill was referred to the Rules Committee immediately and it was never went to any other committee, that means it's never going to get heard. So
Man.
So
Yeah.
we know Tim Moore is the Speaker of the NC House. Who is the chair of the Rules Committee?
Destin Hall,
Destin Hall. Okay.
who will probably be our speaker next year.
Okay. Right. Because Tim Moore's running for Congress.
Yes.
Yeah. Okay. Quinn, you had a.
Oh, well, I was just curious when it goes to the Rules Committee. I want to commend you for being relentless with this and constantly putting something out there so they can't have an excuse. How do you personally handle it? I mean, because nobody likes to be defeated. So what motivates you to just keep on trucking with this?
But she's not defeated. You're defeated when you stop filing the bills.
Exactly.
Right?
That's deep.
As long as you
But
keep filing the bills, you're winning.
yeah, I mean, I think I'm in my 6th year at the General Assembly. This is my 3rd term. And, obviously I've learned a lot since I've been there. I've changed as who I am as a legislator. I've definitely become more confident in my abilities and my ability to speak on things that I care passionately about. And I think that, I feel like we just have to keep filing these bills, because what I've learned from being in first the minority and now the super minority, which is even more defeating than if you're just in the simple minority. I mean, especially this last year or so since we did slip into the super minority when she who will not be named switched parties.
She doesn't get a Harry Potter reference.
I was good, right.
But, I think that my new tactic or my new motivation is to be the voice for people who don't have one.
Right.
Because in that building, many voices are squashed, many voices are silenced. And if I have any power at all in that building, is just to keep pushing and keep being that voice, because that's really all we can do at this point. And so filing bills like these is just a vehicle to keep talking about the issues that are important to me and many others.
Man, that's awesome. And I guess staying on the Leandro case, because we want to get to the vouchers too real quick. What could, let's say, Alamance County, for instance, I think in the case it could fund Alamance County an additional $400 and some million. What can that do for a school system? What could 400? Because I don't think that the average person really understands the difference of 400 million and $3 zillion and what it looks like. So what does $400 million, for instance, look like for a school system?
Yeah, I mean, I'm pulling up a cheat sheet here because there's been some great analysis of this by, outside organizations and also by our own fiscal research department. I mean, one, I would say that kind of money could fund dramatic increases for teacher pay, here in Alamance or any district, every district in the state.
And just to spell it out for folks, because some of the trolls on our social media, because I brought that up, like we should pay teachers like professionals. I think there are a lot of people who really don't understand how crucial that is to attracting talented, qualified, motivated teachers. And from there, just bringing talented, gifted teachers into the classroom, that right there solves so many problems. And I just think it's important to highlight just what that in itself would do.
So, yeah, on that note, I will say, another way that I've really tried to learn more about Leandro is actually visiting some of the Leandro counties. And a couple weeks ago, I went down to Hoke County. So being in Wake County, we're very, we're urban and very kind of in this bubble. So it's really important, I think, for especially Wake legislators to get out of Wake County and really understand what's happening in other counties. So I went down to Hoke County and toured an elementary, middle, and the high school. And I talked to the principal of the high school, and he had, I think at that time, he had over 60 vacancies.
Holy cow.
Just in the high school. And just to think about, and I asked him, why can't you fill these vacancies? And he just said, there's so much competition for talent, whether they might not stay in Hoke or, because Wake County, we give a hefty local supplement to our teachers. So like Johnston County, Harnett, maybe even Alamance, people are going to Wake County to teach because they're getting paid more money because we can have that local supplement. And so, giving teacher raises is not just about paying teachers more, it's about recruiting them and keeping them. The one thing I did want to add that a lot of people don't know, and I'm sure a lot of your listeners don't know, is that the way that our teacher pay scale is in North Carolina, when teachers reach year 15, they do not get a raise until year 25. That's 10 years where they do not get a raise under our state teacher salary schedule. What other job do you not get a raise for 10 years when you're a veteran and you're experienced?
And then factor in inflation and you're really getting a pay cut.
Exactly.
Yeah.
I mean, there's a factoid.
Yeah.
That's crazy.
I know.
I had
a lot
no
of people
idea.
don't know that. Yeah.
No idea.
So it's crazy. So I'll just add a couple more things that kind of money, it could provide more additional slots for NC Pre-K. We know there's thousands of kids on wait lists to get into NC Pre-K, but we just don't have enough funding for them.
Early child care.
Exactly. We could pay for, additional counselors. We hear a lot at the General Assembly. We're very concerned with student mental health, but we're not putting any money into like counselors, social workers, nurses. So, all those things could help any district in the state.
And make smaller classrooms?
Would actually take a lot less than the, whatever you said, $400 million.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Wow. It just seems like a no-brainer to me, and especially when we know we have the money as a state and we just lowered corporate tax rates. I think it's going to hit 0 by 2025, which is just mind-boggling to me that they talk it. Like you said, in the General Assembly, most of your colleagues will say, yes, we have this mental health crisis in the schools, but then they're just like, well, F it, pull yourself up by the bootstraps and figure it out.
Yeah.
We should get a running counter for every episode where the pull yourself up by your bootstraps gets we should, it's like a Snapchat streak, right?
Yep.
I think this is like, I don't know how many episodes in a row, but it's, I think at least a couple that we've had that invoked. You mentioned that when you submit these bills, right, to implement the Leandro plan, that it's maybe not received in good faith. And I'm curious if we could talk about this. The folks who are critical of public education or are proponents of defunding our public schools, to what extent do you believe that there is a genuine belief that this voucher program is actually going to be good for education? It's going to increase quote unquote school choice and competition, and it's going to be a positive thing for our general educational ecosystem. Are people genuinely convicted that that's the case, or is this a fig leaf for the fact that folks just don't want public education to succeed for various ideological reasons?
Well, I always hate to get in people's brains. Think what they're thinking, but I will just reflect on that and the fact.
Well, the reason I ask is just because I feel like you really are one of the few people in North Carolina who is at the table hearing these things discussed. And I'm sure, obviously, it's impossible to be inside anybody's mind, but I'm sure you get a sense based on your working relationships with the other policymakers over who really does believe that this is a solution that will benefit taxpayers and who is really thinking, well, this is what we'll say. I think they cynical.
Because, even our Senator Representative here, she's the chair of the Education Committee in the Senate. And I think she thinks this is a great idea.
I don't know, man.
And I don't know if there's actually that thought. I'm getting into somebody's head, and I'm not asking you to do it, Julie. But I don't know if it's really sitting there thinking scheming to just get rid of public schools, more so that this is going to help. I don't know. Yeah, I would love.
Let's not get in their heads and let's look at what they've done.
There we go.
Because that's all we can really
that.
do.
Yeah.
So since the Republicans have taken over the legislature in 2011, and I heard on your childcare episode you said they haven't made any significant investments in early education since 2011.
Yeah.
Okay, so there's that. I would say that over the last decade plus, they've made many, many choices, whether it's policy or funding choices over the last decade plus, that have diminished our public schools, that have hurt them in microaggressions, I would almost say, little ways. They've taken away master's pay from teachers. They've taken away retirement benefits. If you get hired as a teacher right now and you stay until your retirement, did you know you don't get medical benefits after you retire? They took that away from teachers. They've taken away, the teaching fellows program. Right. So our educator preparation programs are diminished. So it's all these things over the last decade or so that have resulted in now where they can say our public schools are failing. So we need to switch up and we need to switch our funding to these private schools. That's the answer. So I'm sorry, but that to me is a diabolical plan to destroy our public schools. And I'm not basing that on what I think that they're thinking. Right. They've done that.
Starve the beast.
Well, I mean, I think that's very logical. And honestly, it's great to hear you say this because it confirms some dots that I've been connecting for some time, right? Which is you set a program or a system up for failure, and then when it fails, you use that failure to justify giving it the death blow.
Exactly.
Taking it behind the shed with an axe, right? And
you starve the dog, and then it dies, and then you're like, oh, it was weak.
Exactly.
But that wasn't that dog's fault; it was your fault, and that's really what's happening.
Well, that answers my question perfectly. Thank you. and we did it all without having to psychoanalyze anybody. That was fantastic.
So I guess the next thing that we would love to kind of just shed a little bit of light on, we've talked a lot about public education here at the Holler, and by no means are we an expert. We know Daniel was a teacher. I was not. And we kind of hinted on it with these vouchers. But what does it actually mean? So just recently, or last budget, they passed that we're going to give X amount of dollars for these school vouchers, as they're calling opportunity scholarships. But in this short session, they added an additional almost $500 million to this. What does that mean? Because they're not necessarily taking money from the public school bucket. They're just not putting money into the bucket. Can you just kind of break down what this extra $500 million to the opportunity scholarship means?
Well, I mean, one, I will say that when the vouchers were expanded last year, what has really, I think, upset a lot of people is that when these voucher opportunity scholarships, whatever you want to call them, started, they said that they were for low-income families, but then now that's completely thrown out the window, and they're available to anybody. And this expansion with the $500 million that we're talking about this year is literally funding just the top two tiers of income. So meaning you have to make over $125,000 a year as a family of four to now obtain these tier 3 and tier 4. And the tier 4 is even higher. I think it's $250,000 a year. Insanity. And most of these families already go to private school. So this whole notion that this is about choice and like giving parents a choice, they've already made that choice. They're already going to these
We're just
private
subsidizing
schools.
what's
Exactly.
already. Yeah.
So, I mean, the money, like you said, isn't necessarily coming, directly from the pocket of money that we've set aside for public schools, but the Office of Budget and Management has already done an analysis about how literally each district in the state will lose millions of dollars because we don't have the money now to go there. It has to go here.
Right.
So it's choices. It's you look at a budget and you see your priorities, and this is the priority of the Republican Party.
And which is frustrating because one of their counterpoints is like, we have spent the most money on public education this year than ever in our budget. So
disingenuous.
Yeah.
And well, I shouldn't say public education. This is the most money they spent on education.
Right. Yeah. And what you just talked about the expanded funding for these tier 3 and tier 4 families. I find it, I mean, it's for the longest time, one of the defenses I heard since the expansion was announced last year was that, well, this is going to target the low income. But then they come out with this expanded funding, and it's like, this was never intended for, specifically for low income students and families. This was always going to be, like you just said, subsidizing people, wealthy, affluent families who are already attending private schools. And the analogy I think of it as, because another argument you hear is, well, we're not taking funds away from public schools. It's like public and private schools are both sitting in line with their bowl, and we're only ladling private schools, right? And so and then we can technically say, well, we're not taking anything away from public schools, we're just withholding.
I also say that there's so many more of our state agencies that are starving. It's not just public schools. I mean, you look at our entire state budget, I mean, and we have a 25% vacancy rate in all of our state agencies right now. We have roads that are in desperate need of, that's all I hear about in my district, a very fast growing part of Wake County. We have major traffic issues that we need to solve, but we don't have the money to do that. We do have the money to do it. We're not putting it into those things that benefit everybody. These vouchers are only going to about 70,000 families. 70,000 families when we have over 1.4 million kids in public school. And so if you look at the numbers like that, it's really startling that so much money is going to such a small number of people in this state. And we have such tremendous needs in all areas of government. And I just wanted to add, and I don't know if we're wrapping up, but I've been really thinking a lot about this lately and why we're doing this and what is this all about? And really, when I think about it, it's emblematic of, I think, a shift in the thinking, not just at the General Assembly, but in our society around, we're all kind of not everyone, but this thinking that it's all about me, what's best for me and my kids and my family. And we've really gotten away from the notion of public schools as a public good, and that our public schools support our communities. It's not just about education. They provide food, they provide mental health, they provide supports to our families, they provide a safe place for kids. And it really makes me sad because I feel like we're just getting away from this idea that we need to be supporting our entire community. And this voucher system is just kind of all I hear is well, it's my tax money. It needs to go with me and what's best for me. And it just makes me sad because it used to be all about what's best for us.
It's interesting you say that because I was talking to my brother recently and we were talking about, the prepper movement. And just this, it seems like this increasing trend of people kind of retreating away from community involvement and just a belief in the concept of the public good, and turning to the mindset of I'm going to look out for mine, and just how detrimental that is to everybody, including the people who are withdrawing from society. Right? I want my neighbor to be educated. Right? I want us to all have access to certain basic services. So thank you for bringing that up, and thank you again for coming on the podcast. We are running up on time, but as we wrap up our conversation, we want to say thank you. We have a special gift for you. We have some support from TS Designs here in Alamance County. They're a sustainable apparel company, and they are providing each special guest with a special gift. It is a T-shirt that is 100% North Carolina cotton. They say from dirt to shirt. It's a 700-mile supply chain, and we are excited to give you your very own Hometown Holler TS Designs T-shirt.
Thank you. Wow.
And thanks again for coming. And I just want to say,
she's on the ballot.
Yeah, she's on the ballot.
That's right. We can't leave without saying
forget that. But also just how awesome it is that even through this conversation, and I hope the listeners picked up on this, you don't legislate just from feeling. You diagnose the problem. You put numbers in front of it. You put data in front of it. So this just isn't something that you're feeling. And I really appreciate that. I think more of our representatives should do that.
Data-driven leadership, right?
Absolutely. Yeah. And walking the walk. But thanks again for coming on the show and on the Holler. And we look forward to the back porch session with you.
Yeah. Thank you guys so much.
Thank you.